Hello, welcome or welcome back if you've been here before. We're here to talk about my second week of reading for Summerween. I've got my festive spooky mug. Let me take a quick drink. Let's get on to the books. So, my second week of Summerween was classic mysteries. So I read books by Agatha Christie, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and then because I also wanted a book for younger readers, I read books from the Great Mouse Detective series. The Agatha Christie books that I read were Murder in Mesopotamia and Three Blind Mice. Murder in Mesopotamia is the 14th book of the Hercule Poirot series, and it brings Hercule to an archaeological dig in Tunisia. The lead archaeologist, Dr. Leitner, hires a nurse, Amy Leatherin, to look after his wife, who seems to be struggling this year at the dig. Previous year she was fine, but her struggles are affecting everybody. And Nurse Leatherin quickly picks up on the tension between different people on the dig. The story is told from the perspective of the nurse, who questions some of Poirot's methods and conclusions. And this is a twisty road to the conclusion. And along the way, Poirot uncovers just about everybody's secrets. The second book I read by Agatha Christie was Three Blind Mice and Other Stories. And it's a collection of 9 short stories, with Three Blind Mice being the longest. It's about 82 pages. There are other short stories, and these short stories feature characters that you're probably familiar with, like Hercule Poirot and Miss Jane Marple. And I've wanted to read Three Blind Mice for so long, ever since I watched the Lucy Worsley program about Agatha Christie, so I was happy to finally have a chance to do that. In the story, a couple inherits a manor that they open as a guest house. There is a snowstorm, and then they soon find out they are in danger, or that a murderer, someone who's murdered one person in another city, has indicated that he is headed for their guest house, and there are 2 people there that he wants to deal with. And it deals with a tragedy that occurred during World War II, and the tragedy in this story is based on an actual tragedy that happened to a young boy who was staying with a couple during World War II. Some of the guests are entangled in this tragedy, and the murderer is after them as well. All of the stories were really good. I was happiest to read Three Blind Mice. This book is a quick read and has basically everything you love about Agatha Christie stories. And I've also got 2 books by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. And I focused on the longer stories instead of the short story collections that I'm more familiar with. So I read A Study in Scarlet, the first Sherlock Holmes book, and The Hound of the Baskervilles. So let's start with A Study in Scarlet. The story starts with Dr. Watson returning to England after having been away for some years. He needs somewhere to live, and a friend suggests meeting up with Sherlock Holmes, who is looking for someone to share rooms that he has, so he needs a roommate. And it's mentioned pretty early on that Holmes can be hard to get along with, and he has habits that can be annoying. You've probably figured out that they do become roommates, and soon after, Holmes receives a telegram from Inspectors Gregson and Lestrade requesting his assistance to help solve a murder. And the circumstances are intriguing. The victim, Enoch Drebber, was traveling with his secretary, and Enoch Drebber has been poisoned. The secretary has disappeared. A ring was found at the scene of the murder, and a couple days later, the secretary, Joseph Stangerson, is also found dead in similar circumstances. Holmes believes the ring is involved in the murder, or at least belongs to the person who perpetrated the murder, and searches for its owner. Both Gregson and Lestrade follow their own leads, each believing that they will find the murderer first. The story is set up a little differently than other mysteries. So my copy is 131 pages. By page 68, Holmes has found and captured the perpetrator. From pages 69 to 114, it's kind of a look at the history of the murderer and his relationship with the victims. And then we returned to Dr. Watson to finish telling the story. And I appreciate that even in this first book, there are a lot of elements that I love about the Sherlock Holmes books already in the story. The Hound of the Baskervilles is very different from the first book. It's one of the most famous Sherlock Holmes books, and it's many people's favorite. It's the story of a family curse in which the descendants of the Baskerville family are being hunted by a large, terrifying creature with huge jaws and eyes that glow with a bluish flame. It has a different feel than other Sherlock Holmes stories. Instead of being set in London, it is set upon the moors and gives a more gothic feel. I love the atmosphere of this book. And because I wanted to include books for the younger readers, I also read 3 books from the Great Mouse Detective series by Titus, illustrated by Paul Galdone. And the ones I read are Basil of Baker Street, the first Great Mouse Detective book, Basil and the Lost Colony, the second, and Basil and the Cave of Cats, which is the third. You may be familiar with this character from the Disney movie, The Great Mouse Detective. None of these stories, and I don't think any of the stories in the series, actually has the same story as the movie. But the movie uses characters from the book, and it uses some of the same names of other characters and gives them to new characters. This series is really creating a Sherlock Holmes story for children. I really enjoyed the first one, Basil of Baker Street. It's a fun adaptation of the Sherlock Holmes stories. And I'm pretty sure I might have read this book when I was younger. Basil lives in the house of Sherlock Holmes and studies what Sherlock and Dr. Watson are talking about. And in this way, he has learned Holmes' methods of solving crimes and has taken on that role in the mouse world. And this story involves a search for missing twin girls. The illustrations in this book are adorable and fun. There's Sherlock Holmes sitting in his chair and Basil sitting below him taking notes. There's Sherlock Holmes riding in a carriage, and you can see Basil and Dawson riding on the back. So, like I said, I really enjoyed Basil of Baker Street. Basil and the Lost Colony was pretty good too. Not as good, but pretty good. Basil and the Cave of Cats was a different kind of story. There is a mystery, but it's more like an adventure story. For those readers who love adventure stories, they might like this one best of these. For adults reading these, it's not going to take very long. You could read multiples of them in a single afternoon. So you've noticed that I haven't mentioned any YA books that are similar to or inspired by classic mysteries. I do have a few for you, but I've talked about most of these in other videos, so I'm just going to mention the titles. For YA books that are similar to Agatha Christie, there is the Agatha series by Kathleen Glasgow and Liz Lawson. There is the Liar's Beach series, and Liar's Beach itself is a retelling of the mysterious affair at the Styles. And there is 10, which is a retelling of And Then There Were None. YA books like Sherlock Holmes, you've got the Sherlock Holmes series. There are 4 books in that series: A Study in Charlotte, The Last of August, A Question of Holmes, and The Case for Jamie. And I have mentioned this before, I really love this series. The characters are Sherlock Holmes, who is the 3rd great-granddaughter of Sherlock Holmes, and Jamie Watson, who is the 3rd great-grandson of Dr. Watson. And that's our look at classic mysteries. This week, my reading is going to focus on horror, so next week we will be talking about horror books, or books that read like horror books. And I'm going to go find a couple right now. So the first one is Home Before Dark by Riley Sager. And yes, I have been reading a lot of Riley Sager, but I've really been enjoying them. And in this one, it's different than his other books. So there are strange things happening to people who live in a certain house. And 25 years ago, Maggie's family and Maggie moved in, and they lasted 20 days before they moved out. And ever since then, her parents have been telling her not to return. She has been warned repeatedly not to go back to that house. But she's about to do just that. And another book about houses, There's Someone in Your House by Stephanie Perkins. Makani Young thought she'd left her dark past behind. She's moved in with her grandmother now, and she's even started to make new friends. But her past isn't that far behind her. And there we are. I will be back next week when we'll talk about Home Before Dark and There's Someone in Your House and any other books that I'm able to fit in. And it's a tight week. There's a lot going on, so I hope that I'm able to read more than just these two. But if not, we'll talk about these two, and then we'll pick the books for the following week. Until then, I hope that you enjoy all that you do and all that you read. Thank you so much for being here with me today. I hope you liked hearing about all these books. I hope that if you're interested in any of them, you will give them a read, and I hope that you will join me again. So until next time, thank you.